Hi, this is Marianne Clyde. We're so glad that you guys are here today to join us because I have a friend we're going to talk to today, a very special guest. Her name is Jill Kamp with a K from JillKampStrategies.com. And she is such a gifted woman. I was going to read a bio to you, but then you know what? If you don't know Jill by the end of this video, you'll never know Jill. So if there's anything we left out, we'll include it at the end. But Jill, I just want to introduce you to the audience here, and they are excited to hear what you've got to say.
I'm really glad to be able to do this.
Well, you know what? I know you and I talked a bit yesterday about, so what topic are we going to talk about? Because I know you're a coach and you're a very versatile coach and you do life coaching. And one of the things that I think we talked about yesterday, just randomly chatting, was why it's important to make yourself memorable, because we were talking about ways that people have commented to you that you're memorable and the things you do and say and so forth are memorable. And I thought, what a great topic. We should talk about why it's important to make yourself memorable to help your business and help your customer. So does
I,
that sound good?
I have been called many things, but has never been one of them.
Well, memorable would stick and normal is boring, you know. So
In my book, The Power of the Zip, on page 106, I believe, I've got circles. There is incompetent, competent, excellent, and unique. And we all have spent time in work that we are incompetent at, we're competent or excellent or unique at. Here's the deal. It's not good enough to work in your area of unique ability. You have to be excellent at your area of unique ability, and then you will be memorable. When we are not memorable, it's like living a life in beige. Beige walls,
right.
beige clothing. It's a whiteout.
Well, you know what? I think that's so true. And the fact, one of the things that I love about you, and you and I have known each other, we've decided it was 25, 26 years, is because you're also authentic. You're not unique just to be unique. You are just authentic and genuine, and you cut to the chase when you're talking. Because we met at a media dinner at a friend's house one night. I had never met you before. You looked beautiful in this pink wool suit. I remember it exactly. It had a really pretty pink pleated skirt and a really well-fitted jacket. And it was so clearly quality and flattering of your coloring at the time, which was different because that's another thing we'll get to later, that your hair color changes from time to time.
Whatever's on sale.
Okay. Well, and that's exactly the way I met you, because I said, well, nice to meet you, Jill. I love your suit. And you said, oh, this? Well, $4 at the Salvation Army. And then you pointed to the skirt, and I don't remember exactly how much it was. Maybe you do at the time, but you told me exactly how much it cost and exactly that it was secondhand and where you got it. And that was your thing. You were known at that time, and still are in many cases, the queen of bargains. That was your shtick. And you just so naturally, 26 years later, I remember you got a pink wool suit at the Salvation Army for $4, and that's memorable, especially with my brain.
I don't know if you remember this at the same event,
Tell me.
but I was standing next to a man who was about 6'6". I had to look up like this. I happened to be coaching someone who was a colleague of his.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know the connection at the time. And he simply said to me, "So what are you doing with so and so?" Totally without warning, I had to give my mission in like 3 minutes or less. And I knew this was all that I was going to have. And so, fortunately, I've been used to thinking on my feet, thinking bottom line. So, what's your point? So, what's your point? So, what's your point? The very tall man was Stedman Graham.
Ah, okay.
You knew.
And that's right. And I'm sure you made an impact. Just like somebody the other day, I think you mentioned, asked you about yourself. And you and I both know that that can be a pit of despair when you say, "So tell me about yourself." And somebody says, "Well, I was born in Kentucky, and then, my mom was a this and my dad was a this, and I was educated, blah, blah," which is how a lot of us write our bios on our website. And what did you do when that guy said to you, "So tell me about yourself, Jill," besides knowing it was a trap?
Get your pencils ready. Seriously,
This is good stuff.
this is your secret to acing every interview you will ever have to deal with in your life. I've done it wrong. That's why I know how to do it.
Right? That's how we learn.
So tell me about yourself. And I hadn't prepared this, but I just looked at him and I said, well, it started in kindergarten when the teacher said, "Why don't you go to that table and teach those kids how to read?" And since I discovered I have the teaching gene, it's been off to the races ever since. That's how I answered that question.
That whole sentence was the extent of your bio to this guy.
That's it.
That's
And
great.
he, on his face and in his body language, he was so relieved.
That's so you didn't go into the details of why you've got the teaching gene and so forth. But what you did was you gave him information that did so much more than a 3-paragraph bio would do. Because what you do is teach in so many different ways: teaching, coaching, instructing. You teach people how to breathe so that they can project their voices better, so they can work with their voice. You and I have talked about that before. And then you teach people how to act because you've been an actress for years, and owned theater companies and so forth. You teach people how to run a business because you've had businesses over the years. You teach people how to find a mate because matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. I mean, you do so many different kinds of things, but that's because you have this wisdom it's innate in one way, but it's also very polished and very practiced in a variety of ways. And you've had, so how many careers have you
Seven,
had? Huh?
seven, seven.
Okay. Okay, so you got 7. How many hair colors have you had?
I told you, whatever was on sale. I'm almost black. This, which is natural. Now I'm very low maintenance. I've been every shade of brown, every shade of red, every shade of blonde, and you wouldn't believe how many shades there are.
That's right. That's
But every
right.
time you change your hair color, you got to change your clothes.
Well, change can be scary. And it sounds to me like either number one, it's not scary to you, it's an adventure, or it's you recognize the need for change and you just do it as the spirit moves you, and you see the benefit in change.
I am not risk phobic. When I was a single parent, I took my 3 crazy boys to a ski slope. I borrowed money. I didn't even have the money to do this, but I had the feeling, even though they were very young, that they were going to have rich friends who were going to invite them on ski vacations. And I wanted them to be ready.
There
And
you
my
go.
youngest was like 5 and a half. And how would you imagine that a close friend of mine and her husband were on the same ski slope with a video camera? And he
Go
goes
figure.
to another interview on the mountain. And he said, "So, Jill, what is this experience like?" And I said, "Well, basically, it's like I'm in a house that's on fire and I have to grab my children and carry them out through the fire so we can get to the other side." I said, "I am not athletic. I don't ski. I really hate it here, but I am doing this to help my kids have a life." And I never forgot that because actually I was prophetic. My youngest one became an avid snowboarder, and he also now is a surfer.
Right?
And all three of my boys can ski the Black Diamonds. Who knew?
That's right. That that's another principle though, coaching principle that you use that's so important that you don't look at the obstacle and think, how am I going to deal with this obstacle? You look at the end game and say, how am I going to get there? And almost as if the obstacle's somewhat invisible. And it's kind of like, I remember learning that from Tony Robbins years ago, when I was teaching how to break a board with my hand, is you don't look at the board, you look at the wall on the other end and you break through that, because if you're looking at the obstacle, you're only creating enough momentum to punch that obstacle. But if you look at the end, you're creating much more momentum to get where you want to do. So you hated skiing, big deal. You don't ski yourself, big deal. You're
Be real just for a moment here. I don't want anybody who's watching this to think that I charge through every fire that has ever been in front of me. I do have days where I just don't. But I spend a lot of time pondering and thinking and writing. I'm actually a think tank of one person. I
there
have
you
great
go.
conversations with myself and all of my personalities so that I think through the problems that are at hand. And that's what's going on today, especially with COVID, but it'll be something else in 5 years.
Hmm.
We all have challenges, and we
Right.
can either succumb to the avalanche or think strategically. And in StrengthsFinders, strategic planning is one of my top five.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so where does being memorable in the midst of that, where does that come in?
I want to be memorable in order for anything that I say to help you or anyone else grow. Whether it's an individual, a CEO, corporate executive, doesn't matter who I'm talking to. It could be somebody I just met on the street. It could be when you call a helpline and you're talking to someone in India or the Philippines. No matter who I'm speaking with, I seem to, if I am given an insight, I want that insight to have gription inside of you. I want it to stick. So, how do you do that? With words, with silence, with word pictures, with provocative questions. And in case you want to know, all that is in here.
And that's important to know, because I recognize gription as a phrase that you've created to fit in the book. You talk about speaking with the skill of a surgeon, which means you don't just ramble. You have a reason for every word you say. And the reason has an impact on somebody's life. And so you live a life of purpose and creativity. You just let the creativity roll. And we go back to what I know about you, about your authenticity. Like you don't blow smoke. You speak from your heart. And you you just got a brand new website and everything, again at jillkampstrategies.com, and you started a whole new email campaign and so forth to people who sign up for your email, which you all can do. And several people recently, and this I think is unusual, but several people recently have said to you, Jill, that point you made in your email, that's really important. People need to hear this. I think you said somebody else had mentioned that this is really, what did, somebody said it was really gripping in the way that you presented your topic. And the reason for that is you're authentic. You're if something crazy or weird or some analogy comes into your mind, you weave it into your email so that the information you're giving is memorable.
I do that because it's a huge victory for me that I'm able to do that. In fact, I took a workshop that you offered, and it's Hero on a Mission. And I have 7 careers and then a bunch of other minor ones. I often feel like, that ball that hangs on a string on a tetherball
Yeah.
thing. There's a pole. I often feel like God is just batting me around just to see what I'm going to do with it.
Right.
So, but when I took that course, I said, okay, finally, I'm going to figure out the pattern in all of these careers that I've had, because I want to go for broke. I want to give it my all. I'm not going to live in spurts anymore. I'm just going to do it all. And so I discovered as a result of that workshop that I could take the spaghetti of my life and make lasagna.
Yeah.
I mean, spaghetti that's a mess, and a curated, crafted lasagna.
Yep.
In fact, I have a story attached, but it's not relevant. So the point is, that analogy made people crazy. And so people I haven't heard from in a long time who are getting the email campaign are giving me feedback because it stuck with them.
Mm-hmm.
It gave them gription. And when someone that I've shared that with someday is going to say, oh man, this feels like spaghetti, I want to make lasagna, they're going to contact me and
That's
I'll be
right.
able to help them.
That's right. So I don't want our video to end before you actually talk a little bit about the power of the zip and why you wrote it.
Lord have mercy. Okay, so see this book with a zipper across my mouth? When I thought of that, I just laughed so hard. I thought anything that makes me laugh is keeper. The Power of the Zip is actually at least 10 books in one. I wrote it because in my life, the way it was, I was abused by my parents, by my sister, by my first husband, by boyfriends, anybody in my life who was very, very strong and had bully tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at me like raw meat. And you can either get eaten or you can rise above it. And I am so grateful that I had the desire inside of me to rise above it. And that's why I wrote that book. I remember people saying to me, Jill, you're always saying there's another way. What is that other way? And finally, I was teaching managers for FAA. We were living in Florida. And I realized that all the leadership stuff that I was teaching was part of the answer. That is the other way. And I'm just going to fast forward here for a minute because a lot of people are bullies and they don't even know it.
Mm.
And I have an article that I wrote about for fedsmith.com that's in my book. And I printed out there are 7 ways, 7 behaviors you might exhibit that would show that people would think you were a bully, whether or not you are. And all of a sudden I realized I can help bully-proof people, individuals, and big picture, we can have a huge impact on our community, on our state, on our country if we defang the bullies. And I'm going to give you one quick example. Not too long ago, I had to have a conversation with someone that was very dicey. And the other person was, and I was very, very quiet. And I breathed through the whole thing. And and I finally got an opportunity to speak, and all I said was, I have a different perspective. That's all I said. And the other person went, and again, when I got the moment to say it, I said, well, I have another perspective. This conversation, which could have been horrific, was bridge building and did not destroy a relationship, but actually built a bridge to a better relationship. Now, we have all been bullied, maybe in the grocery store or by a family member. We have all experienced what it's like to be bullied. To think that a simple sentence and your vocal tone and your manner can defang a bully. This is better than the stock market. Just saying.
That's huge, Jill. It's so huge because there's a proverb that says, even a fool when he is silent is considered wise. There's a lot of strength in silence. There's a lot of strength with holding back and, like you said, breathing. You know, not reacting, but taking that little bit of space, that you take that deep breath and just search your mind for, how do I want to respond to this? I don't want to react. I want to respond. And when you respond thoughtfully and zip it for just a moment, it gives you much more power, much more efficiency in your communication, and people are willing then to listen, because usually we listen in order to answer. We don't listen to really understand. And I think the most important thing in communication is understanding the other person that you're communicating with, which you teach very well.
So we're not saying, and this is really key, we're not saying stuff those feelings, because
Right.
people will trigger us all day long if
Right.
we allow it. In fact, in
Right.
my book, I have a huge chart of feeling words in case you're stuck and you just think it's mad, sad, glad, bad. I mean, there are other adjectives for how we feel.
Correct.
And somebody taught me this not too long ago, and my notebook is filled with it. I have this just stupid little notebook. At the end of the day, all the things that I decided not to react about, but that are very real in my feeling store chest,
Mm-hmm.
I write it in my notebook like this. How dare they talk to me that way? How dare they look at me like that? How dare they insinuate blah, blah? I have pages of how dare they. It's very therapeutic. They
I'm
never
sure.
see it, they never publish it. And actually, I was surprised that it works before you go to sleep, because usually you think you're supposed to be very quiet and serene before you go to sleep. But this stuff has been stored up. It's like saving all your leftovers from today's meals. And you got to do something with it before the night is over.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've had a day that's really chock filled with potential abuse, I will write out a whole lot of how dare yous. And it's wonderful. You could take that to the bank.
That's right. That's another proverb too. Is don't go to bed angry. You kind of get it out in your notebook, and then you're just free and easy, and you can sleep real sound. And so that's what I mean about the kind of wisdom that you dispense whether you're speaking to an audience, whether you're on a video, whether you're teaching a class, whether you're one-on-one with a client, and you do all those things. That wisdom comes out, and there's a lot of wisdom in stepping back, zipping what you think just has to come out, and then responding in a really wise and thoughtful manner. It makes you a much more likable person and effective.
So in line with the theme of how to be more memorable, we think the person who says the most words wins. And that is such a lie.
Right.
And it's not even saying something that's wise, although thank you for the compliment. I was teaching a bunch of classes at an academy for the FAA, and one of my former students poked his head in the class and said to the students, he didn't even say hi, he said, "Is she bending your brain like she bent mine?" And I was so thrilled. If I can say something that triggers in you a personal discovery, a search, a thought you've never had before, an idea, a plan, an inspiration, then I have done my job. And that, in fact, is the power of the zip, to wait until the other person has a chance to unfold to themselves. And you take as long as necessary to allow that process to happen.
Jill, that is awesome. And that's actually a great note for us to end on, because I think we can do hundreds of videos with the different topics that we like to chat about. But I want to make sure our audience got what they needed, because we didn't read a bio, but they found out that you're the author of The Power of the Zip, that you are a life coach, that you are you have a new website called Jill Kamp with a K, wink, wink, jillkampstrategies.com, that on that website people can sign up for your newsletter and your emails. And even doing that, they can get a little assessment. How likable are you? I think that's what it's called, right? And
Yeah.
and it's an easy, straightforward little, it's not many questions. It's just sort of like, figure this out. If you think you're likable, maybe, maybe not, and how to fix it. And so they can communicate with you through that website, easy peasy. What else didn't we cover about, they also know you have the gift of teaching because you've had that since kindergarten. And is there anything else that you want the audience to know that we haven't covered specifically today?
Well, the area of my work that has been expanding is the corporate coaching, and not just coaching CEOs, which I'm doing. In fact, one CEO said after one of our first sessions that he realized that he was a competitive thinker and a competitive speaker. You know how huge that is for someone to recognize it, and has changed the way he communicated with his whole team. But I work with the board of directors to make sure they all understand what the mission is and to make sure all of their activities are focused toward the mission. I worked with coaching individual members of the team, vetting for hiring, vetting people, asking the kinds of questions that would let you know if you thought this person would be a good member for your growing team. A whole range of corporate things. So if you're on my website under services, there's a whole menu.
Awesome. So they can find out more about you there. Yeah. Well, Jill Kamp Melton with a K. And you have these great strategies that are on your website. I really appreciate you taking time with me today. I love what you're doing. And I just recommend to you, the audience, to go ahead to her website and check out all the stuff Jill does. Get her book. It's available on Amazon. And is it available on your website too?
Yes. They can go to resources, just click on it. There are 3 books there. This one, the workbook, and then I also have a version of The Power of the Zip called The Power of the Zip in a Heavenly Light.
So there's a more spiritual side to some of the things that you're doing. Okay, so you got a workbook, you've got a spiritual side of The Power of the Zip, and you've got The Power of the Zip. Jill Kamp, thank you for joining us today.